Hey everyone, um, back at it in the pickup. I'm trying something new here. I even got a separate little microphone for this mobile ag uncensored podcast version. I do not have the dogs with me. I am headed into town and figured, why not? I'm here. See how it all turns out. It is a windy, blustery day, anyways. Some rain finally up here in North Dakota, which is sorely needed. But speaking of that, maybe that's what I'll talk about today. Okay, so spring planting is well on its way. Um, it is here. It is many places, everywhere, pretty much. Especially here, people are trying to get in, before this rain, and people want to get done as fast as they can. Of course, precision ag and ag tech stuff can always be problematic when you're in a rush, when you're trying to get things done. Maybe you spent money on this file or that process, but something's not working in the cab, some electronics, GPS, how it's connected to a planter or drill or whatever. Something can always happen. And then, people get frustrated and annoyed. So this has always been a problem. It's always been a thing. And, for many years it only you had to kind of be an expert. You had to really try at it to really put all the pieces together, have some help. That's why adoption was always kind of slower. It wasn't because the tech couldn't do something valuable. It's not that people didn't see the value in it. It's that handling it and putting it together was just, and getting it to the tractor, to the, sprayer or whatever, applicator, was always problematic. Just as a pain in the ass, really. It still is. It still can be. But, as time's progressed here, now a lot of, the advents of, more cloud-based software systems, and then hardware that's connected through the cloud, through the internet, through some sort of connection point. I mean, you have groups now wanting to connect stuff through the satellite data networks. It's gotten a lot easier. You can just send things, press of a button, instead of having to throw a little thumb drive or do something that. And you know, that's some still have to do it that way just because of how it's set up. But we're getting past that point. Of course, you do need at least newer monitors, and have to usually pay some money for the right services to get all this stuff together. Which, okay, cool. But if that was the pain point for someone before, well, that shouldn't be the case now. So that's in general summary of where kind of the precision ag part in ag tech is right now. It's still progressing, but it is getting better. The major OEMs all have their solutions for this. They have for years. But what's interesting, and this is what I'm going to talk about, and maybe this will just be a short podcast. We'll see how it goes. But more and more, you're starting to see pretty big separation between the groups. And there always has been, but it's a little different. And I've talked about this before in the writing side of it. But farmers are choosing their equipment now more so based off how the tech works within it, the hardware, and how it connects to data and processes and automation, than they are the equipment themselves. It's the sole reason why CNH bought Raven and AGCO bought Trimble, and Precision Planting before that, is that just the equipment and the branding and the marketing of that wasn't enough. Yet they're kind of slow to it. Call it the way those businesses were structured. CNH has their European counterparts, and it's kind of a multi-level ownership type thing. Same with CNH, AGCO, is that way. And there's other brands, they have the same problem, kind of. John Deere doesn't have that problem. No, I'm not saying they don't have a bunch of owners or things like that. They weren't made up of a bunch of groups. They're just John Deere. They can just do John Deere stuff and from the top level change things. Like AgCo, for instance, they have to fight with the German engineers around things. CNH has to as well, and others do too. They have to kind of fight through all these different factions internally, and it's put them behind. And I've talked about this before too. Is my my cousin who works for one of the majors? Yeah, he said to try to sway large equipment purchases away from Deere just because of it was it was harder to train the farmer on how to use the system that does the same thing, which is basically auto turn on the end of the end rows. It was not explained well enough, and the support and videos, the training material was just not good enough, so farmers couldn't understand it. So it was a group of farmers, I don't know how many, but they were willing to spend basically an extra, I think it was 10 or $15 million just because John Deere's version of that was easier. The tech itself to do that cost probably the same. Maybe, the difference was, you're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of tech that would showcase, a 10, $15 million decision. They were buying based on that, not the equipment, because as they felt the equipment basically all does the same damn thing anyways. The warranties are all the same, all those stuff. Of course, John Deere comes with a premium price. Not necessarily because of the tech, it's just because of, I don't know, in essence, they just can. They maybe put a little more money into their process, much like, certain car manufacturers do the same, or in certain models, they put a little more emphasis on it than others. But that's reality. I just saw a post on Twitter or X, whatever you want to call it. It's going through the same thing. The new John Deere monitor, the Gen 5, I think. It's a cool like LCD display, but it's different. I mean, I have a 2023 Chevy. It's got a nice kind of horizontal display. It looks very similar. It's kind of fitting that narrative instead of just this big square bulky kind of monitor. And yeah, John Deere's has done that. AGCO, CNH, others really haven't yet. Maybe they're planning to, but they're always behind on that, and they always have been. And that is deciding big things. And I think this is going to naturally flow into once things, the more robotics of sorts. And I'm not talking necessarily small robot tractors in the field, although that, it'll come to various degrees. It's more just the automated processes of, like I said, the turning in the end rows, or maybe going around obstacles. It's like it just has to fit, just has to work. Like even this mic that I bought, I didn't want to download a separate app. I didn't want to sync it in some way. It clips into the phone. I press two buttons and it just works. That's it. Charge it, turn it on. That's inherently what farmers want. They want the same in software too. They want like one place, and that's why John Deere's put so much effort into Ops Center, and why the others have bought their respective softwares. But they've like kind of wasted time on doing that. I don't know if they can catch up. Maybe they can. Hard to say. I think AGCO's got more promise there than CNH, to be honest. A lot because they have the Precision Planting brand, and that's actually, when it comes to precision mag based stuff, hardware, software, it's the second most trusted after John Deere Ops Center. It just is. More of that might have to do with like planter components, and then it's like, oh, here's a thing. And then you've had, of course, for a while, Monsanto owned it, and it had FieldView and all connected in, and that's why FieldView is fairly popular. It's really just because of that. People got used to it, and they're like, well, I'll use it for these other things. Um, that's making purchase decisions. That's basically what I'm getting at. Is it's not necessarily about the equipment. That whole thing is changing. Like I don't Farmers don't care if the turning radius on this tractor versus that is slightly better or worse in a sense. Maybe in Europe, I guess, because they have smaller fields, tighter turns, but and then stuff like that. It's a The things are way too over engineered as they are. They can't really get much better. You can't really make them much bigger. You can't make them too much more efficient unless you get into the you know hybrid mode of diesel electric, which it should go that way, but there's reasons it doesn't. It just goes to show that some of those tools are deciphering how farmers are buying equipment. I think construction is done the same. There's ways to operate the equipment from far away, literally some other country. Um, watching a TV and basically mimicking the process. That's coming to ag next. It won't be necessarily full robotics, but yeah, you can probably operate something from the shop instead of being in the field yourself, um, or at least others can. So you don't maybe need that. If you have let's call it a custom harvesting operation, and they got, I don't know, let's call it 8 combines running. You might just need one main operator in the field, just to be there and look over stuff. Maybe switch from combine to combine, get it kind of set where they want it. Then you probably have a service support guy floating around, to fuel, maintain, all that fun stuff. And then you have the rest of the crew are just, they're back home. They're somewhere else. You hire them cheaply by the hour. It's cheaper to do a custom harvesting operation because you don't have to bring a bunch of people, pay for giant campers or, hotels for them to stay at, extra food, all of that stuff, extra trucks just so they can get there. Custom operators could use services to drive them where they need to go instead of having to have that equipment themselves. Naturally, some of the robotics groups are getting to this now with the swarms of things, which I'm skeptical on just because of logistics. And the tech needs to get better, sensors, and where, field obstacles are still problematic in many cases, but it is going that way. And people are making decisions on that. It's not just how comfortable the seat is, or even the shape of the tractor itself. It just has to do the job. And while I am on the fence of how successful that process will go, mainly due to just the emotions of farmers and the personal tie to equipment. I mean, it's like I've talked about before. It's like a classic car of sorts. It's like that's why they want the old tractors. It's fun. Now, are they doing everything with it? No, some are kind of, you know, smaller farms. Um, like as I'm driving by here, I see a big 4-wheel drive tractor. I mean, that's what's operating stuff like that's what's operating most of the acres, and it's fairly new and modern, and you know they just want the price to be right. They want it to connect to all the right stuff, and then just kind of let it do its job. Bigger farms are well into that. Bigger farms farm most of the acres. Bigger farms are going to get bigger. There's still a case for things for smaller farms, as I've talked before, and they got to get unique and niche. But when it comes to equipment, um, even the smaller farms will get into automation. You can own a smaller swarm of 3, 50 horsepower tractors instead of one 200 horsepower tractor, something like that. I mean, I look at what my friend Craig grew up at Sabanto's doing. Yeah, that that can work. Now, I will argue though a little bit on that. It depends. That type of thing doesn't work quite everywhere. Um, the other day, and this isn't a shot at them, just a story comparison. They compared like two of the tractors they're working on, which I think are 120 horsepower John Deere's, what 60, I want to say 6150Ms or something like that, 6120M or E, whatever, pulling 20-foot no-till drills. Well, for one, Craig, if you're listening, the picture wasn't the 1590 drill box drill that you were putting on. It was a different model. Anyways, I'll just stop. I'll stop at that for that. But he compared it to having two of those, cost brand new for everything in his system is like 500 grand, something like that, compared to 60-foot Borgo air drill with all the creature comforts, and then a brand new John Deere tractors, and they're $1 million a piece, $2 million. And the acres per hour, if the robotic waited 24 hours instead of 12 hours for the other one, was about the same because of stuff. Now, that wasn't a perfect comparison. And this is where robotics groups that are trying this automation have to be careful, because a box drill versus a Borgo air drill with 5 tanks on it that holds 1,200 bushels is quite a bit different. Um, you can run longer without stopping, and you can put on all your fertilizers at the same time. That's the point to them. The box drill, compared to, not saying you couldn't do it, but you'd have to modify it quite a bit to do all that same operation in the first step. The equipment just doesn't match the same profile, kind of, as kind of apples and oranges. It would have been better to compare a 8-row planter, which is 20 feet, to a 60 or 80 foot or 90 foot planter. That would have been a better comparison. Same thing. More of a one-on-one comparison. But so just be careful on how that works. But that's the thing is, you'd have two things. You could use them for other stuff, which is good. But sometimes it's actually easier to have that one big thing too, especially in the area like I live, the Plains area. You don't necessarily want 10 different tractors in a field, 10 different things that can break. You want one big thing that just keeps chugging along. Of course, that breaks, you're down. So some people have two. Larger farms might have 5 of them, so same with the combine situation. They have 10 combines, not one. So it depends on where you're at. In certain areas, these automated robotic things can work. And I think um, that's where the push is. But where some of these tools, say like what John Deere is doing, that's a little ahead of their competitors, at least in how it's marketed and styled. Um, they want to push the bigger equipment to do it, not the smaller ones. And mainly because the large farms are not going to swarm stuff anytime soon. They're still going to want to buy big things to cover lots of acres really fast. That's what they have. That's what their other farms are set up. That's who's going to pay for it. These things. Smaller farm, they're just not ready to do swarms of things. And conventional crops, commodity crops here we're talking, they're just not there because they don't need to. They can get by with the 20-year-old tractor that you have normal auto steer on, and they're one guy. Maybe their son or daughter helps, or maybe some other family member, even wife gets in the cab, or well, she's doing the farm and the husband helps. Whatever, however it fits. You can do it. You can do that. That's fine. You don't need the swarm of things. The efficiency wasn't in the automation of you running the tractor. Efficiency was just the tractor being bigger than compared to his father or grandfather. The efficiency gets kind of maxed out depending on the type of acres. So if you're say 2,000 acres, you can use a 20-year-old tractor and get a 10 to 20-year-old planter or drill or air seeder for pretty cheap, sprayer for pretty cheap, that can handle these acres really easily. You don't need the biggest and brightest. People get confused on that. They're like, oh, to farm this, you would need all this equipment and it adds up to like $5 million because they all do new costs. Like, well, no farm works that way. Very few work that way. The only ones is that they've owned all their shit for years and they just want newer stuff and they want it because they want it. It's not about efficiency. It's just they want something newer and more shiny. They're not caring about the automated ag tech tools. They just want the newer, cooler thing for bragging rights. It's that's the difference. You gotta think about that. Is it's more emotional than you know technical, I guess, or physical. But the large farms are at that point. Their efficiency points are different. Yes, biggest equipment, but now it's like okay, their next efficiency point is running longer, 24 hours a day. To my point earlier, is the comparison is like you'd only run the Borgo 12 hours and then the drill is 24 hours. See, that's not right either because a lot of big farms, say up in Canada, will run their big old Borgo and other, you know, types of drills. They'll run them 24 hours too. I know a few that do it, and it's harder, but they pick up that extra efficiency. They get that extra timing. It, they're going that level. If they can remove someone, one person from the cab or maybe from the farm together, maybe they're saving, $100,000 a year, and that can go towards more tech or more upgrades to do something. They're at that level. They're nitpicking efficiency. Smaller individual farmers that are just they're not nitpicking efficiency. They're maybe are more constant. They're putting more time and effort, less towards maybe the ag tech stuff and maybe hey, I need to market the grain better. I gotta, insure my crop differently. Um, Actually having older equipment and being able to fix them is actually the greatest point of their efficiency because they can handle it. They can't afford the service fees or the brand new tractor combine anyways, and they can't afford, they can't get to that level to get that warranty where the people just come out and fix it. Their efficiency is going older, is going more simple equipment. That is their efficiency. So getting back to the beginning, farmers are starting to make that decision based on the tech doing some of this itself easier instead of the equipment itself. Well, on larger farms that are getting bigger and that are more modern, yes, that is true. That is accurate. And as those farms farm the majority of acres, yes. But there's still more people that farm less of the acres that are content. They've got their costs down to the right spot. They've got you know, they just they'll put that somewhere else. Maybe they'll push more into variable rate, or um, maybe they'll be more apt to do a sprayer with upgrades for nozzle control better instead of they'll have the older planter and tractor, but they want to have their sprayer be the newest, latest, and greatest. I know farmers like that. They'll all the other equipment on the farm will be older, except the sprayer is the newest, latest, and greatest stuff. Good friend of mine, that's how he kind of does it. They might pick what that tool is that is got the latest, greatest, but the other stuff they don't really care. As long as it drives straight, they can fix on themselves. Parts are fairly cheap. They'll just stick to that because it works. The efficiency level is maxed out for them. And if they have kids that can help too, well, who cares? They want them to take over later anyways. They can hire for cheaper, if not free. So the robotics thing doesn't play. It only really plays on larger farms or very niche specialty crop farms. I mean, so all these things, that's it's kind of all it all fits in general. So for the big OEMs, you're battling. I don't have to tell you what to do. You're trying to figure it out and trying to grab market share. One is kicking some butt on this side, but maybe the others will fill in the gap. There are other factors to play. Just pricing of new equipment itself is a factor. Um, where the local dealership is. That's usually a giant one. It doesn't even matter the color as long as the dealership's close and they do good. That's a big factor. Maybe the tech is the factor. You know, for others, it's just they just want it to work and they can fix on it, and it lasts. Simple as that. Parts are cheap, but they might upgrade. They might have one thing, and then for this the swarm and farm robotics guys, it's probably easier to find a niche crop that needs stuff like this than trying to be broad everywhere. Your corn soy farmers aren't going that way anytime soon. Um, your fruit vegetable groups, yeah, I suppose. Maybe you can dive into potatoes more, something like that. I know up here we have a lot of sugar beets. We have a lot of potatoes too. A lot of robotics groups are trying to get into the sugar beet side for various reasons, mainly weeds in season. While there is GMO varieties that help, there's resistance. It's almost getting back to cultivation again, but yeah, scaling that up here for that is going to be pretty tough, and it's not a huge acre base either. But maybe, I don't know. I'll even it out for them, 50-50 chance maybe. But that's probably what the robotics guys got to do. Maybe it's just focus on turf, growing grass. Maybe it's focusing on just doing, I don't even know what other, carrots or something, or onions. You know, do that. Do that first. Don't go after the corn and soy guys or wheat guys, because your robotics isn't going to work for them. Their robotics is going to come from the OEMs, from just automating, driving a giant machine that they sold to them. Find your niches still, and then expand from there, if as you see fit or as the need arises. Learn where you want to go after. If John Deere thinks automation is a big deal going forward, well, guess what? They got the market share of the bigger farms. Yeah, that's where they're going to put that. Do they see opportunity in the smaller farms? Yeah, but also not as much, just because they're smaller. People that farm like to drive tractors too. I don't know, fun fact. Like, seriously, people just like to do it. Taking the cab away or roboticizing it is not really what most want. They actually want to sit in the tractor and go up and down the field. Like, seriously, if you are a robotics company and don't know that feeling, then ask someone to get in a tractor and drive it for a while, and they'll be like, "Oh, this is pretty cool." And there's other elements to it. Heck, just getting out of the house, getting out of the shop, having a break from your family sometimes. Even that, those are real things. So if you haven't experienced some of those things of the thing you're trying to combat, well, you're you're kind of doing it wrong. Even the even the robotics groups that are, trying to auto weed or auto harvest or whatever, from lasers to robotic arms. In essence, you should go work in the field and pick it manually, because that's what you're trying to replace on some of it, manual weeding or driving the tractor that's going up and down. Like do the job that you're trying to replace with robotics. If you haven't done that yet, well, you just need to do it, because then you can't have perspective on what you're trying to replace. And maybe you just got to sit on one of those farms for a while and be like, hey, I'm going to do this because I should. Sometimes people forget that there's a perspective in how farmers farm of all sorts and sizes. As for all those building tech, keep that in mind. Maybe you built the coolest software that can do XYZ and can give you this file or show you that this crop is this, but until you're actually the farmer using it, or the agronomist actually using it, or whomever, unless you're the person actually using it for their own need or experience that, you don't really get what the issue is. Probably another reason why adoption is weird in AgTech is that. Anyways, some food for thought on this lovely Monday, driving in the rain. So we'll see how this one turns out. But thanks for listening, and we'll see everyone later.